The bright lights of the studio shimmered against the polished floor as Kelly Clarkson stepped onto her stage with her signature smile. The audience roared with excitement, waving placards and clapping furiously. It wasn't just any episode of the Kelly Clarkson Show. Today, the legendary Jon Bon Jovi was sitting across from her, a rock icon whose voice had defined a generation. Kelly had been ecstatic about the booking. She'd grown up listening to his hits, and she imagined the episode would be a fun mix of laughter, nostalgia, and perhaps a soulful duet. Yet, what she didn't know was that simmering tensions backstage would soon erupt into one of the most shocking moments in daytime television history. The conversation began innocently enough. Kelly leaned forward, her enthusiasm filling the room. "Jon, welcome. I've been such a fan since I was a teenager. You've written some of the most iconic songs ever. Do you ever get tired of singing Livin' on a Prayer?" The audience laughed warmly. Jon smirked, brushing his silver hair back. "Well, Kelly, I'd be lying if I said I haven't sung it about 1,000,000 times. But hey, it pays the bills." The crowd erupted into applause, but there was something about his tone, sarcastic, almost biting, that made Kelly pause. She laughed awkwardly, choosing to steer the conversation toward lighter ground. But Jon wasn't finished. "You know, the thing about this industry," he continued, "is that everyone thinks they can just come in, win a reality show, and suddenly they're a superstar." Kelly froze. The audience gave a collective gasp, sensing the sting in his words. Kelly Clarkson, after all, had launched her career by winning American Idol. Her smile faltered but quickly returned, though now it carried a thin edge. "Well, I'd like to think hard work after the show played a part too." Jon leaned back in his chair, crossing his arms. His voice dripped with condescension. "Sure, Kelly. But it's not the same as paying your dues in smoky bars for years before anyone cared about your music. Some people just skip the struggle." The tension in the room thickened. Kelly's jaw tightened, but she kept her composure. The live audience shifted uncomfortably, unsure whether they were witnessing playful banter or a genuine clash. "Jon," she said firmly, "I respect the grind. I know what it means to fight for a career. And I don't think it's fair to say reality shows take away the struggle. For many of us, it was just a different kind of battle." The applause that followed was more than polite, it was supportive. Kelly's fans rallied behind her, and Jon's eyes narrowed slightly, realizing he had struck a nerve but unwilling to back down. "Different, maybe," he said coldly, "but not the same. You didn't have to claw your way through rejection after rejection for a decade before someone gave you a shot. That's what builds character. That's what makes a real artist." The room went silent. Kelly's smile vanished completely now. The cameras caught every flicker of emotion across her face: hurt, anger, resolve. For a moment, she seemed ready to let it slide, to smooth over the conversation and keep the show moving. But then something inside her shifted. Her shoulders squared, and she leaned in, no longer the smiling host but the fierce woman who had fought her way through an industry notorious for chewing people up. "You think I haven't clawed my way through this industry, Jon?" she snapped, her voice cutting through the silence. "You think winning a TV show meant everything was handed to me? I've faced executives who told me I'd never make it, radio stations who wouldn't play me, and critics who said I was a nobody with a lucky break. And yet here I am, still standing. Still singing." The audience erupted. In cheers, standing to their feet in support. Jon's jaw clenched. He hadn't expected her to push back with such force. "Look," he said, his voice rising, "I'm not saying you don't work hard. But don't compare a reality TV shortcut to the blood, sweat, and tears of building a band from scratch." Kelly stood up from her chair now, no longer interested in keeping the talk show facade alive. Her voice trembled with both fury and conviction. "I don't care how you define it, Jon. Struggle is struggle. And just because my path looked different doesn't make it less valid. You don't get to dismiss what I've lived through just because it doesn't fit your narrative of what an authentic artist is." The audience roared again, chanting Kelly's name. Jon shook his head, visibly irritated, his rockstar ego clashing against Kelly's unwavering determination. And then, in a moment that stunned everyone, Jon Bon Jovi pushed back his chair, stood up, and said sharply, "You know what? I don't have to sit here and be lectured on what makes a real artist." Gasps filled the studio as he turned and began walking off the stage. The cameras scrambled to follow him, the producers panicking in their headsets. Kelly stood frozen for a moment, her chest heaving, her eyes blazing with equal parts anger and disbelief. The audience didn't know what to do. Some shouted for John to come back, while others cheered louder for Kelly, treating her defiance as a victory. The atmosphere was electric, a mix of chaos and exhilaration. Backstage, John stormed past crew members, muttering under his breath, "I don't need this crap. I came here to talk about my tour, not to be dragged into a debate about American Idol." His publicist chased after him, begging him to reconsider. Meanwhile, on stage, Kelly faced a dilemma. She could either end the show abruptly, leaving the audience in shock, or she could turn the moment into something bigger. And Kelly Clarkson had never been the type to back down. Taking a deep breath, she addressed the audience directly. "Well," she said, forcing a small smile, "that wasn't how I thought this interview would go. But you know what? Maybe this is a lesson. We all come from different roads, and sometimes people won't respect your journey. But your worth isn't defined by someone else's opinion. It's defined by your perseverance." The crowd exploded into applause, some even chanting, "Kelly! Kelly! Kelly!" Social media lit up instantly. Within minutes, clips of John walking off the stage began trending on Twitter and TikTok. Headlines appeared: "Bon Jovi storms off Kelly Clarkson's show," and "Kelly stands tall against rock legend." Fans argued online, some siding with John, claiming he was just being honest about the industry, while others hailed Kelly as a champion for every artist who'd been dismissed or underestimated. Backstage, John sat in his dressing room, fuming. His publicist reminded him that walking off a live show would spark controversy, but John waved him off. "I don't care. I've been in this business long enough to know my worth. If she wants to turn this into a sob story, let her." But as the hours passed and the backlash grew, even John began to realize the damage. News outlets were replaying the confrontation on a loop, dissecting every word. Fans posted emotional messages about how Kelly's story resonated with them. Artists from different genres tweeted in support of her, praising her courage to speak her truth in the face of a legend. Kelly, meanwhile, ended her show with a powerful performance. She stood on stage alone, the lights dim, and sang a heartfelt ballad that wasn't on the schedule. Her voice soared with raw emotion, silencing any lingering tension. By the time she finished, the audience was on its feet, some even in tears. The next day, both John and Kelly were headline news. The clash became more than just a celebrity spat, it sparked a national conversation about what defines an artist, the value of different paths to success, and the invisible struggles behind fame. A week later, John issued a carefully worded statement. "I have the utmost respect for Kelly Clarkson and her career. Our conversation became heated, and I regret walking off. While we may come from different paths, we both share a love for music and the journey it takes to share it with the world." Kelly, gracious as ever, responded on her show. "I appreciate John's words. At the end of the day, music is about connecting with people, not tearing each other down. I'll always stand by my journey, and by anyone else's who's fighting to be heard." The feud slowly cooled, but the moment remained unforgettable. Fans would forever recall the day Bon Jovi walked off the Kelly Clarkson show, and how Kelly Clarkson stood her ground, turning a clash into an anthem of resilience. For Kelly, it wasn't just a fight with a rock legend. It was proof that no matter how famous, or how criticized, she became, her voice, her journey, and her truth would always matter.